Welcome to today's Explainer. We're jumping right into one of the most structurally profound and historically rich chapters of the Quran, Surah Hud. To really unpack the depths of this text, both historically and theologically, we're relying strictly on the brilliant commentary found in Maulana Maududi's famous work, the Tafheem. Our goal here isn't just to skim through the text. We want to actually understand the context, the core concepts, and the epic historical narrative of the Great Flood that anchors the whole thing. So, let's get into it. Okay, before we even look at a single verse, you have to understand the sheer weight of this revelation. There's this incredible historical anecdote cited in the commentary. Abu Bakr once noticed gray hairs popping up on Prophet Muhammad's head and pointed it out. And the Prophet's response? He replied that Surah Hud and its accompanying chapters had literally aged him. Think about that for a second. The intense, weighty warnings and the immense burden of the divine message in this specific chapter actually took a physical toll on him. Keep that massive gravity in mind as we go through today's explainer.
Here's a quick roadmap of where we're headed. We'll start with the time of revelation, move on to the core themes and warnings, and then dive into the case study of Prophet Nuh. From there, we'll look at the Ark and the Flood, the tragedy of Nuh's son, and wrap it all up with our final takeaways.
All right, Section 1, Time of Revelation. Let's look at the Zamana Aden Zul.
To truly grasp what's going on in this text, you have to picture the atmosphere when it was spoken. According to the Tafsir, this surah did not come down during a time of peace. Actually, it was revealed during the incredibly difficult late Meccan period. At this point, the believers were facing intense systematic persecution from the ruling tribe, the Quraysh. So this wasn't just some casual, everyday message. This was a final, stern warning. The commentary really emphasizes how tense the atmosphere was. It was basically a final ultimatum before a divine decree was going to be passed on a society that was just stubbornly rejecting the truth.
Moving right along to Section 2, Core Themes and Warnings. We're getting into the ideological core here.
So knowing that this was a final ultimatum, what exactly was in this revelation that made it so incredibly heavy it physically aged a prophet? Well, the commentary points out this really stark contrast in the rhetorical structure of the surah. On one side, you've got Dawud, which is this beautiful, logical invitation to the absolute oneness of God. But paired directly with it is Tanbih, a severe, uncompromising warning about the consequences if you reject that truth. It's this masterful balancing act. It appeals to human intellect while simultaneously completely shaking up human complacency.
It essentially boils down to this. The ideological core of the surah revolves around Tawheed, or absolute monotheism, but it urgently ties that to the unavoidable reality of the hereafter. The text is practically pleading with humanity not to get totally lost in the illusion of temporary worldly success. You know how easy it is for societies to just measure their truth and success by their current wealth and power? The Tafsir points out that doing so means completely ignoring the massive, inescapable reality of divine accountability.
Section 3, the case study of Prophet Nuh. This is where it acts as a historical mirror. To take these themes from abstract theology down to concrete reality, the commentary uses the story of Prophet Nuh. It holds a mirror right up to society. Think about the social dynamics at play back then. When Prophet Nuh stood up and delivered his warning, how do you think the arrogant, wealthy elites, the guys who basically ran the society, responded when their entire way of life was challenged?
Well, their response was incredibly telling. They didn't engage with the actual logic of Nuh's message. Instead, they just mocked his status. They dismissed him because, to them, he was just an ordinary human being without massive wealth. And even worse, they pointed at his followers. In the elite size, because Nuh's followers were from the poorest, most marginalized classes, the lowest of us, then the message itself had to be completely worthless. It is a classic, textbook example of confusing your socioeconomic status with ultimate truth.
Which brings us to Section 4, the Ark and the Flood, the divine instruction.
So the mockery from his people is absolutely relentless, but Nuh holds his ground. And soon divine instruction kicks off one of the most famous, devastating events in human history. The Tafsir breaks down the chronological progression of this punishment, and it's fascinating because it wasn't sudden, it was a methodical process. Nuh spends years delivering the warning. Then he's ordered to build this massive ship on dry land, which, of course, just invites more ridiculous mocking. But then the cataclysm starts. Water literally starts gushing from the earth, referred to as the tanur or oven. That's the point of no return. It culminates in the massive flood, and eventually the ark coming to a safe rest.
Look at how the tension ramps up in this exact divine command. Nuh is told to build the ark under our eyes, meaning under direct divine supervision and protection. But check out the staggering second half of that verse. Do not address me concerning those who have wronged. Wow. The time for dawah, completely over. The time for pleading for them, over. The decree is finalized, and even a prophet cannot intercede for a society that has so arrogantly sealed its own fate.
And what's amazing is that the Tafheem Quran doesn't treat this like some mythological fable. It anchors it right into concrete human history. The commentary actually maps out the region of Nuh's people, locating the final resting place of the Ark on Mount Maududi in Mesopotamia, right between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. It takes this profound divine narrative and grounds it firmly in our physical, geographical world.
Moving to Section 5, the tragedy of Nuh's son, the ultimate clash of faith versus family.
Right in the middle of this macro-level destruction of an entire society, the narrative zooms in on a heartbreaking emotional climax. As the floodwaters are rising, we witness this incredibly tragic interaction. Nuh sees his own son drowning and calls out to him, but his son, still relying entirely on worldly, material logic, yells back that he's just going to climb a tall mountain to escape the water. He's trusting a physical rock over a divine warning. Nuh replies with absolute, terrifying clarity. Today, no physical mountain, no wealth, no status can protect you from the decree of God. And tragically, right then, a wave crashes between them, and the son is swept away.
This specific event introduces a massive theological paradigm shift, which the commentary explains thoroughly. It draws a hard line between spiritual lineage and blood lineage. In the eyes of divine justice, true kinship isn't about who your parents are or what tribe you belong to. It is based entirely on shared faith, shared ideology, and righteous conduct. Basically, your biology does not grant you spiritual immunity.
This is cemented in a staggering moment of paternal grief. Nuh asks God about his son, reminding God of the promise to save his family. And God's response is an unyielding declaration of pure justice. He is not of your family. Because the son's actions were unrighteous, the biological bond is literally severed in the spiritual realm. It's the ultimate proof that even being the direct bloodline of a mighty prophet cannot save a disbeliever.
And finally, Section 6, Final Takeaways. What are our lessons for today? We've covered a ton of ground today, all the way from the streets of Makkah to the floodwaters of Mesopotamia. Let's distill it all down. First, carrying the truth, prophethood, carries an immense physical and emotional burden. Second, the story of Nuh is a timeless warning that elitism, arrogance, and worldly wealth offer absolutely zero protection against divine justice. Third, ideological bonds are infinitely stronger than biological ones. And lastly, history in the Quran isn't just there for storytelling, it's a mirror and a direct, urgent warning to us in the present day.
So I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. Nuh's son looked at a massive, unmoving physical mountain and thought, that right there, that will save me. And he was dead wrong. Consider the temporary mountains in our own lives right now. Whether that's our bank accounts, our social status, our careers, or our family connections. If a literal mountain couldn't save a prophet's son from accountability, what worldly illusions are we clinging to for our own safety today? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I highly encourage you to really reflect on that question as you continue your own journey of learning.